And he grabbed my arm and he said, "You will never see your children again. You should not be anyone's mother." And I was like, I believed him.
If you or somebody you know has battled addiction, you're going to want to check this episode out. Welcome to Rock Bottom. I'm Ned Fulmer. Today, my guest is Lara Love Hardin. She's an author and a mother who overcame a battle with heroin addiction on her way to becoming an Oprah Book Club bestseller. In this episode, we dive into the pain and the secrets and all of the things that she was carrying while she was in her active addiction, and what that moment was like when the police showed up at her door and she was arrested for stealing from her friends and neighbors to finance her addiction. The things that the police said, the things that the judge said, those are things that she had to face head on, and that were very painful. Her journey out of it, I think, is a really inspiring story, and I hope that you get a lot out of it. You know, addiction is cunning, baffling, powerful, makes people feel so alone, like there's no hope. And I hope that with episodes like this, that you who are listening that feel like a sense of community, feel less alone. This show is part of my desire to build a more curious and empathetic world. You know, I've seen firsthand how much shares in group settings can help promote healing and help promote honesty and ownership, and letting people feel like they're, you know, that there is hope. Thank you for being here, and please join me for this conversation with Lara Love Hardin. Lara, welcome to Rock Bottom. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I never planned on being on Rock Bottom again, so.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
This is just the name of the show. Just a vehicle to tell stories and inspire people.
It's the best kind of rock bottom.
Right. I hear you're calling in from Hawaii. Do you live there?
I am empty nesting in Hawaii. My youngest son went off to college, and so I wanted to live in Hawaii since I was 21. I said, someday I'll live there. So here I am. Took a minute.
Gosh, congratulations.
Thank you.
How's empty nesting going for you?
It's
I hear
going.
That's a big transition.
It's great.
Is it? Okay, you're like, finally it's out of my house.
I know. I could pretend to be sad, but no, it's great. It's I'm living my best life, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, Hawaii is absolutely like paradise. My kids, we just went there for vacation last year, but they keep talking about it. They're like, when can we go back to Hawaii? I want to see more fire dancers. They think it's like just so close.
Yeah. I actually, there's a park. I'm on the Big Island, and the fire dancers practice there at night. So it's kind of fun just to walk around and get a free fire dancing show.
Oh, wow. That's very cool. That's nice. You're getting all of the benefits of the luau without the overpriced pork sandwiches,
without the crowds,
and
without
sliders.
The tourists.
Yeah, without the crowds either. Yeah, you're getting real Hawaii. Well, I'm excited to have you on the show. I'm really inspired by your story, and I'm sure our audience will get a lot out of it. I mean, you're a best-selling author, you're a book agent, ghostwriter, you're selected as one of Oprah's Book Club commendations, and before that, you overcame a lot of struggles, including a battle with addiction and time in prison. We'll get into all of it. But I'd love to start with, one thing I was struck by when I was hearing about your story was, you kind of started in this very ordinary suburban life. And I can relate to that. I think in a lot of my work previously as an influencer, I'd kind of have a very like picture perfect outside, while not necessarily feeling the same way. So I'd just love to hear like, what was daily life for you like in that time period?
Yeah, I mean,
before.
That's the problem with having the perfect life. It doesn't really leave room to not be perfect, So I was very invested. I lived in Aptos, California, on a cul-de-sac, which is suburban as you can get. I had 4 boys. I have 4 boys, and I had 2 stepchildren. So I had 6 children in private school, owned a business, and was playing the role of the perfect cul-de-sac wife and mother. And the whole time I was struggling with opiate addiction and hiding it and trying to stop and quitting and then starting again. And then because I quit for a week, I told myself I didn't have a problem. And that went on for a long functional time until everything kind of blew up. And, you know, I grew up in a family with a lot of alcoholism and addiction. And so I thought I could out-educate whatever afflicted my family, right? And I could geographically relocate 3,000 miles away and get away from whatever afflicted my family that no one talked about. And, you know, it's hard to outrun yourself. So I was prescribed, pain medication with childbirth. And this is back before the opiate crisis was a crisis, right? And so in the mid-90s, pain medication, specifically Vicodin, was handed out in sample packs. I remember it being on a display dish, like little blister packs at the dentist, at the doctor. Wow. You had an earache, you gave birth, you had a cramp, it was just handed out. And like 48 million people.
Free sample.
It really was a free sample. It's not even a joke. It was free samples. It was like Halloween candy bowl, right? And so I was, in my first marriage, I had 3 young boys, was dealing with a lot of infidelity with my husband. And I remember the first time I took one of those prescribed pain pills that I had in the cabinet for emotional pain, right? As needed for pain, right? And so I had emotional pain, and suddenly I could pretend everything was okay when it wasn't. I could pretend it was super exciting to play army guys and fold laundry when it really isn't that exciting. And I liked the way it lit up my brain. I felt better. I think I was self-medicating. Maybe it was depression. I don't know. We never talked about it then. It was a different time. And I certainly never would have talked about it or admitted I didn't have it all figured out.
Yeah, that monotony of kind of the picture perfect cul-de-sac life, I think is something that people don't necessarily tend to acknowledge. Certainly, that's not the common thing that people acknowledge about having children. You kind of want to focus on all the wonderful, precious little angel elements.
Yeah, and I think it's
and
hard.
Certainly, I was going to say, certainly dealing with the emotional pain of infidelity in a marriage that is having challenges, I can only imagine how hard that must have been.
Yeah,
it seems like it was very isolating.
Yeah, it was isolating, but it was purposely isolating, because I would never have been able to tell anyone I needed help or I wasn't happy. I was just so invested in pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. And I think the marriage was sort of the least of it. It was more my idea, I'm going to have the perfect family. It was more the idea of what I was determined to do. Growing up,
where did that come from? Did it come from childhood or magazines or describe what you thought the perfect family was?
It's so interesting because I did grow up thinking everybody else's family was normal, but my own, right? I don't have a specific memory of a TV show or anything, but it was just everybody else has a normal mom waiting with cookies when they get home from school. I went home alone. Everyone else has a family that's not chaotic and I don't know what I thought. It was just sort of ingrained in me. And I was when I have kids, when I have a family, it's going to be perfect. I'm going to do it perfectly. It's going to be happy. Everyone's going to talk. All the things. I don't know. I think we spend a lot of time in our life either being exactly like our parents or being the opposite of our parents. But nowhere in room for either of those things are you being you. Right? There's no room. I'm either going to not be my mom or not be my mom, but that's still not being me, So I don't, I just had this idea. I'm going to have this perfect, happy family that I imagined everybody else had. Now I know no one has it. Everybody's got secrets in those cul-de-sacs, but some of us are like to fail spectacularly, right?
Yeah, for sure. I know for me, a lot of the like models of perfection came from social media.
Yeah.
And from like, you know, what would get the most likes. And it's like, oh, well, if there's a glossy photo or if things look cute, it's like, oh, that kind of gets the most likes. So I guess that's what people want to see. I think it's really interesting, these external factors that can, you know, play into your internal sense of what you think you should be doing in the world. I'm also really struck by this idea of always defining yourself in relationship to other people, like your parents say. I think it's really challenging to find out and discover what your own sense of self is. That's kind of seems like part of becoming an adult.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about this, you know, kind of when did things start to shift? Was there a specific moment, or did it happen gradually in terms of going from this sort of picture perfect, if boring life with kind of turmoil and pain to something that was getting more and more out of control?
Yeah. I mean, I will say like addiction tends to progress, right? It's hard to just sort of like keep it when it's addiction, you know, keep it in its lane, right? So that one pill I took where suddenly like, oh, I'm happy. I can pretend everything's okay. I thought I was like smarter and I was so funny, you know, like I thought I was a bolder, brighter person with the feeling that one pill gave me. And then it took 2 to feel that way. And then it took 3. And then I was like, oh no, I have a problem. I took 3 pills today. And so this went on and off for years, honestly, until I was taking...
It's a long time.
To get that same feeling, I was taking 20 at a time, 3 times a day.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Which is like incredible for even me to think about now, you know, and this is, you know, a while ago, 16 years ago, or even longer actually. But so I kept stopping. And when I'd stop, I would have this mantra like, choose life, because I knew I was like self-destructive, you know, I mean, there's no, you know, I had a certain logic about it, but I couldn't it's really hard to explain unless someone's been in that compulsion and that like nature of addiction where like you want to stop, but you feel like your very survival depends on not stopping, right? Like you feel like you will die. And so, so that happened. I stopped. I ended up like 6 years, totally clean, sober, I was the poster girl of recovery. I went to 12-step meetings. I said all the right things. I didn't do any of the work. And then I was I was in this cul-de-sac in a second marriage that, again, was not going so great. And I tried smoking heroin for the first time, which is a natural progression of opiates. And I had a relapse after 6 years, and it took 11 months for my life to be completely destroyed, to completely implode my life, and then my book starts, right? So, but it was 11 months of that, of addiction and losing everything and spending all my money and lying and stealing and all of the things.
Wow. Does that feel fast to you in retrospect, or even that is you think, wow, it happened for that long?
That's a really good...
It seems like quick compared to the, you know, what you're describing of years and years, and then kind of the time of not using but not fully becoming spiritually sober.
Yeah. That's a really good question. No one has ever asked me that question. Looking back, it sounds incredibly quick. And when I think back to what the day-to-day life, when that is your entire focus and trying to keep this secret and maintain and function, and, you know, it's like juggling plates on a high wire in the windstorm. You know what I mean? It's like, it feels incredibly long. And it's interesting too, because, you know, I wasn't like out of my mind. Like you wouldn't know necessarily. I mean, I got very skinny, but I had a fabulous lie about that I thought was so brilliant. But like, I told my friends someone came over and said, you know, I'm worried about you. What's going on? Like you've gotten really, really thin. And I said, oh, I read the book, The Secret, and I manifested myself skinny. Like I thought it was a brilliant, I like books. What can I say? So I thought this was a brilliant lie. A friend of mine said recently, a friend from way back then said, yeah, I just thought you were like really ill. Like I thought you had cancer. I thought but nobody said anything. Like one person came over, and then after that, like I wouldn't answer the door. I just my world got very, very small. And I kept saying, I'm going to stop tomorrow. I'll figure this out tomorrow. Like tomorrow, I just have to get through today. And then tomorrow I'll fix it. Tomorrow I'll stop. Tomorrow I'll ask for help. Tomorrow. And then I ran out of tomorrows and I got stopped.
Yeah, man, that definitely, I can relate to that. That's a tough, running out of tomorrows. Definitely, it's a tough idea to think about.
Yeah. And the whole time, I think it's hard for people to understand. Like I knew right from wrong. Like I knew what I was doing was kind of against my own personal, like who my personality is at core, right? Like I'm very generous. Like I'm like kind of like what do you need? I'll give it to you. But in that sort of compulsive state, I'm not going to give you, I think I'm going to steal your credit card. Like that's, I was stealing from my friends and the other parents of private schools because I needed money for gas and groceries because I was spending my money on drugs. And so it's really hard. Like I knew right from wrong and I still couldn't stop.
Right.
You know, and
do you ever, did you have a process of reconnecting with some of those people and kind of making things right?
Yes, I did. I mean, it's interesting. A lot of, I have. And, like it was my friends. Yes. My neighbors. I mean, this is jumping way ahead, but after the book came out and after Oprah picked it, this is why true life is like so much crazier than like anything you can make up in fiction. So my book comes out, and then my oldest son got married last year, and like every single person from my book, the neighbors, the friends I hadn't seen, everyone's at this wedding. So like you got the whole cast of characters in one place. And so that was really the first time we'd been together socially. And I wrote in the paperback version of my book that just came out in February, Simon Schuster had me write a whole bonus chapter. So it goes through that whole thing. But I think, I think some people are still hanging on to, people hang on to things for decades. And, I worked really hard for a long time to like prove I was good and valuable again. I don't really do that anymore, but I did that for a really long time.
Yeah, I can relate to a lot of things about your story. I mean, this idea of things that are problems for tomorrow, I think, is something that I would tell myself, and then it's at some point you can't continue to push off something that you have to confront.
Yeah.
And I also far earlier in my life, I had my own, I can relate to like how opioids can set someone on a path towards addiction. I mean, I think for me it was not a lot more like just smaller, but I had like a knee surgery with a bunch of prescriptions that then like I continued using for far later than I was supposed to. And fortunately, you were talking about kind of dealing with it all on your own and not wanting to talk about it. For me, there was interventions early enough that, it's like I had a physical therapist that I saw 3 times a week, and like we'd talk about it. And then at one point he's like, oh, you're way past the point where you're supposed to need that anymore. Like you don't need to be doing that. I remember feeling like this pain of like, oh no, but I like doing it.
Yeah, you don't know my pain. You don't know my pain.
What are you talking about? You don't. But I don't have anything to do during the day.
Yeah, I mean,
what?
I mean, I think everybody has something, right? Like everybody has something. Like not everybody like steals because they have something, but like everyone has ways to cope. Until I had other coping strategies, that was my coping strategy. That was probably like you're coping to get through a boring day, right? Until you had other things to do. So, I don't know. I wrote my book, like there's more like alcohol at a Little League game than there is at a Super Bowl party. You know what I mean? Like it's just but that's okay. It just depends. Everybody has their thing.
Yeah, it is funny, the things that people deem socially acceptable versus not.
Yeah.
Okay, so we kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but I guess walk me through more the moment where things start becoming unmanageable for you, and what was that rock bottom moment for you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the rock bottom moment was I'd been like, again, the day I ran out of tomorrows, right? Which was, when you look back at it from like 16 plus years, it seems like, oh, what a gift. But at the time, it was not a gift. What happened was the sheriff's deputies pounding on my door in that cul-de-sac. And they came in and arrested me for stealing because I, again, stole, like written a check on my neighbor's checkbook and had been stealing. And I got arrested, and there were drugs in the house. My 3 older boys were at school, but my youngest son, Caden, was home at the time. It was election day, 2008, Obama's election day, November 4th. And my son was home, and I remember he was like watching, there's this show called Wonder Pets, and he was in front of the show, and he had all his stuffed animals watching Wonder Pets, and they came in, and there were drugs in the house. They arrested my husband at the time, too. And he became my co-defendant instead of my husband, which is when the romance is over. That's how you know. But so
just a little tip to the kids at home.
Yeah, just a little side note, little relationship advice. So
turns out that's when you know it's over.
That's the red flag.
You get arrested together.
Yeah, when you go from husband wife to co-defendants. Okay, so and I'm laughing now because it was really, they came in, there was drugs in the house, so it was and I lived in a neighborhood where the cul-de-sac did not fill up with police cars, and it did this time, and they put me in handcuffs, and I started saying, let me call someone to come get my son, let me call someone. And they wouldn't let me do that. And Child Protective Services came, and really like the A version, like pre-rock bottom, and then the really rock bottom a few days later. It started there when he ran to me crying because he was scared. And he's at that stranger danger, and my hands are in handcuffs, so I can't comfort him. So all I can say is like, it's okay, they're friends, this is okay, and he's crying, and they pull him out of the house. And
oh my gosh.
I get put in the back of the police car, and I'm crying the whole way. They're taking me to jail, and I'm crying the whole way, saying like, where's my son? Where are you taking him? And we get to the jail, and the sheriff's deputy brings me in. There's like this sort of no man's land between the outside and the inside of the jail where you get booked. There's sort of like a hallway or something, the doors are kind of, and so we were in there, and I was still crying and asking him, and he grabbed my arm and he said, you will never see your children again. You should not be anyone's mother. And I was like, I believed him. Like, I like hung my head, and I was like, oh my God, like there's no more tomorrows. There's no, like this, I can't justify this away. I can't pretend this isn't happening. And so that was part A of the moment. And looking back now, he could have been said, like, he's okay, he's going to be here. And then this, he didn't do any of that. He just said, you'll never see him again. And I believed him. And so I went in, I got booked into jail. I got charged with, because I'm an overachiever, I went from no criminal record to being charged with 32 felonies, right? Charles Manson has 7. Yeah. None of mine are violent. I've never been a violent person, but like
A+ felony game.
Yeah, thanks.
Just straight to the top.
Such an overachiever. And so, but a couple nights later, I was in jail, and I wasn't sleeping because I was detoxing from opiates, and you don't sleep for like a month. And I was like, I have just failed at life. Like, I love a good redemption story. I love that, but that's for people who are good, and I'm just bad. And I was just really like, it would be better. I really believed, and probably should trigger warning your people about what I'm about to say, but I was like, it will be better off for my children to have a dead mother than to have a mother who is in prison. And I didn't think, I didn't know, I didn't know the system. I didn't know what was going to happen. No one was like, there's no like orientation brochure when you get to jail. And so I decided, I wrote a note.
They don't give you a pamphlet?
No, there's not even a binder like you get in cheap hotels, right? Like nothing, but I wrote a note to my children.
Welcome to jail.
Yeah, here's what you can expect. So I, wrote a note to my boys and told them I loved them and said I was sorry and that I hoped addiction never got a hold of them. And then I decided I would just wait till everyone went to sleep. I was sleeping in this place called the Freeway. So there's like private rooms, and then the Freeway are like double bunk beds. In my mind, they're triple, but actually they were double. But and the guards come in every hour to check. And so I got into bed and I like tied the sheet around my neck like 6 times. I'm not like great at knots, so I was like really being careful. I was gonna hang myself, and
oh man,
and I was waiting in between. So this was definitely my rock bottom because it was a really calm decision. It was just dark. Like I've never been in that dark a place before, but I was like, I have just failed at life. Like everybody else has it figured out, and I don't, and I can't. I have nothing in me to get through what's in front of me, right? Like I don't have that spark. That there's no will, there's no spirit. And so by some miracle, because the guards come in every hour with a flashlight, I fell asleep. It was the only time in like 3 months I slept through the night. I fell asleep until they were like scraping in these chairs. I can still hear the sound, these plastic chairs they scrape in at like 4 a.m. for breakfast. And the lights come on and I have the sheet tied around my neck and I'm like super embarrassed, right? Like that's all I'm thinking. Like still not saying like, hey, maybe I need help. I was just like, oh my God, I don't want anyone to see. And I'm trying to undo the knots. And
wow.
And luckily, I was never in that dark a place again. And I got brought into sort of this emergency court thing that morning, and they told me where my son was and that my ex-husband was going to be able to get him. And so like I was never in, I knew he'd be okay with his brothers. And it wasn't like everything was wonderful after that. And I still didn't know how I was going to get through it, but I was just never in that much quit before, like, like I was never, things were not that dark again for me. Things were really hard for years after that. But I ended up pleading guilty to 32 felonies, some of which I did, many I didn't, because I just took a plea deal. I would have pled guilty to like 1 million, right, to be able to see my kids again. And I spent just a year in jail, and then I got out, and I was, jobless, homeless, friendless, childless, carless, communityless. When I was sentenced, my face was on the front page of the local paper calling me neighbor from hell. And I'm actually an excellent neighbor, but like that was the headline. And someone anonymously mailed me like all the online comments to that article. Like it was a fake name and, hundreds of them. And I would be in jail and like read them over and over and over again. And I just internalized that, like, I am a horrible person. I am like, there is no hope for me. Like, it just really, really horrible things. And luckily there was like a couple books in jail that saved my life that I read because I was spending like all my time just like trying to rewrite the past. Why didn't I ask for help? Why didn't I, like you do when something happens, why did I do that? Why did I turn left instead of right? Or worried about the future. How am I ever going to work again? How am I going to get my kids back? How am I going to rebuild? Who's going to want to be my friend? Like all of these things, my mind was going crazy. And then a woman got taken off on the prison bus and she left behind the book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And there's like one sentence in that book that tells you how to stop your thoughts. And it was like, you think to yourself, I wonder what my next thought will be. And like everything just stops, And so like it stopped for like a millimeter of a second. I don't even know if that's how you measure seconds, but a very short time. And then I just kept doing that. And then I learned to meditate in jail, which is like a great place. But I mean, take an online course if people are listening, don't do that. But it is a great place to like get a meditation practice. But really I had to like control my own mind and my own worry and fear. And that was the beginning of, the second book. This is a crazy story. So 16 years ago from right now, I was in jail and I was reading this book called The Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo, right? It was like a daily, it's like a daily essay kind of book, little mini essays and like a lot of wisdom. And so I'd read that every day. And it really saved me. Like those two books kind of saved me mentally. And then in 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be teaching at Omega Institute, a writing class in New York. And Mark Nepo's there teaching the same weekend.
Oh, wow.
Which I'm totally going to stalk him.
What a cool full circle moment.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Like that's, it's just like I was 16 years ago, like I was hanging on to every word he wrote to just kind of like get me through.
Yeah.
And then now I'm going to go kayak on a lake next to him or something. I don't know what we're going to do, but yeah, now we're both teaching at the same retreat center. So
you'll get to tell him how much his work meant to you. And I'm sure that there are so many people out there that your work means so much to them as well.
Yeah.
I'm completely floored by your retelling of this story. I mean, that image of your child reaching out to you and then having handcuffs on. I mean, that's just every mother's, every parent's, father's nightmare. And I just want to honor that story that you told and how you're, just that how dark of a place that was for you. This idea of, seeing all these comments from the article and having that kind of mirror your own internal self-talk is definitely something I can relate to. And, I'm really, happy to hear that those the writings of those books were so like fundamental and kind of pulling you out little by little. You've talked about like creative writing as kind of something that was your kind of gift to give in jail. What were other people doing? Like what sort of how did that experience transform you as you're kind of coming out of it day 1 into day 2 and 3 and 4 in this year? Yeah,
I mean, it's the women I was in jail with saved me. It's not like people think about jail of whatever they see. They watch Orange is the New Black or they would see whatever they see on TV or movies. But when the women saved me because they like taught me they taught me what there was no brochure for. So they taught me and like anything, like you're at a PTA meeting and there's a natural disaster. There's going to be a power struggle in there. I mean, there's already power struggles in PTA, but you know what I mean? Like there's going to be people will form a family and form a community wherever they are, especially when they're going through hard things together. So, in jail, you can't do anything for free, right? That's suspicious. So like everyone has their different skill. There were artists, there were like people designing furniture out of Tampax boxes and toothpaste, like IKEA level furniture. Like there was a lot of creativity and there was a lot of trauma too. Like almost 100% of women in jail have histories of childhood trauma. 80% of women in jail are mothers. So we were all even if our life circumstances were different or our demographics were different, were most of us mothers, desperately missing our children and loving them and struggling with unresolved trauma, And so I, looking back now, it was a great gift for me because all those roles I had created to be the perfect wife and the perfect mom and the perfect cul-de-sac dweller, everything was gone in jail. I didn't even have a name. I was just a number. I had none of those roles. And so I got to me, it was a gift, like it was a gift to sort of become me. I'm more me now than I've ever been me, which is great. I don't know if I'd ever become me. But I started. It kind of connects back to that idea about defining yourself in relationship to other people. Like it's sort of ironic that in jail, this like identity erasing place is kind of where you were able to sort of craft a new identity for yourself. Yeah. Is that fair to say? Yeah, that's definitely fair to say. And I think it also got me back, the first line of my book is reading was my first addiction. So like books were always the thing that saved me as a kid. When there's chaos, I would read. I went to college and graduate school for writing. And then I had kids and of life. And I was like, you can't make any money writing. I have to do other jobs. I was a real estate agent. I was a bookkeeper. I owned a pet cemetery. Like I had all these different things. And so one of the gifts also was I started writing again. You know, like I can't do drugs and write at the same time. It's one or the other. But writing is always how I processed my feelings and made meaning and sense of the world. And so I started writing again. I learned to be a ghostwriter in jail. I started listening to the women and writing letters to the judge as them to try and get them like treatment instead of prison or a pass for a family event. It was probably a crime doing that, but it was a crime for good, right? So, and the
Just
thing
chalk one up on the number 33.
I know, really. But I broke up with a lot of people. I like seduced a lot of, like, I was the like jail writer, but it felt good, you know, because it was like, oh, I have value again. Like out in the world, I had no value. Like I didn't have one friend from, you know, any of my book clubs or school mom things or little league or anything that came to visit me in jail, you know, like, so I was like, okay, I have value. I got paid in bear claws, which is like an excellent way to get paid. I never had to make my bed, you know, like everything is sort of like, what skills do you have? And you're sort of trading skills to get through. And then when I got out of jail, like, again, I had nothing. And it's really hard to get a job when you have 32 felonies. And so I answered a Craigslist ad for a literary agency to be a personal assistant, like 5 hours a week, $20 an hour. And I was like, I've made it if I could do this. And, you know, I had a don't ask, don't tell policy. Like, if you just meet me today, 32 felonies might not be the first thing you think of, right? And so he didn't ask if I had a criminal record, and I didn't offer the information. He found out a few weeks later, but luckily I'd had a chance to prove like my work ethic and my creativity and my writing skills. And, you know, when I left that agency almost 13 years later, I was CEO and, you know, had ghostwritten 5 New York Times bestsellers. And, you know, I was writing a book for Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Like, first of all, I was like, who working with Archbishop Desmond Tutu is advertising on Craigslist? Like, I thought for sure I was going to die when I went for the interview, like get murdered, but, you know, okay. And I had a car that didn't go uphill, but I was keeping a secret. Like, I was doing all of this writing and work in the world. And for 11 years, I didn't tell anyone that I was working with, any of the authors. And I'm not working with judgy people. Like, we're working with the Dalai Lama, you know, like these are not, and Archbishop Tutu and Brian
He is
Stevenson,
known to be such a
so
cat.
judgy. Yeah, I was sure he was going to be super judgy, but I was so like trying to build a resume of goodness. Like, so when the truth came out, like, but look all this good I've done in the world. Look, Nelson Mandela thanked me in his last book. You know, like, look at the goodness, so I could like defend my humanity. You know, like it wasn't conscious, but that's what I was doing. And it was like, shame is so isolating, you know, and, you know, you can't make friends because I'm like, well, I can't really be your friend because if you ask me about my past, I'm not going to tell you, but I'm afraid I want to tell you, but I don't want you to run away. You know, it's just like this weird dance you do.
Yeah, it's funny. When I am meeting people now at events, because we're recording this before I've published anything, so the top level of all my Google results is sort of the scandal.
Yeah.
You know, if I meet someone just casually and they kind of get to know me, they're like, "Oh wow, what a cool guy!" Like, let's follow each other on Instagram. I'm like, "Oh no, well, maybe let me just give you my phone number. Don't Google me." You know, it's like I'm afraid, you know, because I don't know, just it's
because people are judgy.
Just when someone's going to judge you by your worst moment,
right,
because it's the first thing they see on the internet, then you kind of want to avoid that.
I was so afraid of the Google. Like, now when you Google me, that app, it was that Neighbor from Hell, like, headline, right? Like, so now if you Google me, it's like still there, which it should be. It's a little part of my life, right? But you have to go back at least 5 or 6 pages. I haven't checked in a while. But it's there, which is fine. Like, it should be there. But it shouldn't be the first thing, you know, like that's kind of been the journey. Like, that's not the defining thing.
It sounds like it's so much more of a mental journey of you kind of learning to move on yourself. And, you know, then when someone is, you know, if kind of you can stand by your own like sense of, well, this is who I am and this is what I'm doing now and what I feel good about, then someone else can kind of think however they want. But when you're really unsure of yourself, then you're really afraid that someone's going to think something
Yeah.
negative of you.
Yeah, I mean, shame is super sticky. Like it's so easy to like slip into it, and so it took me like way longer than I wish I had to sort of like own the story and be like, yeah, this is who I was, you know. But there's so much freedom in that. It's so much lightness in that, you know, and you're not worried that people are going to find out. You're just like, yep.
Yeah, for sure. Was it clear when there was like a moment where you can look back on it thinking like, oh, wow, I've really taken a big step in releasing this shame? Or was it kind of just more of like something that evolved over the years where you know, your first New York Times bestseller doesn't really, you're still a little on edge, but then maybe by the second or third one, you're like, okay, maybe I am.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't the New York Times bestsellers, because even those authors that I was like writing with or for didn't know, right? And so, like I told, like the first group of people.
I don't think I realized that.
Yeah, no, it was like 11 years. So I had like racked up my resume of goodness, but it was really like the first thing I did. I joined an improv group, right? Like it was like a group of like misfits and old theater kids and like my people, right? Like I loved it.
I've been in many an improv group. I certainly know.
So you know, so I joined. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do something that terrifies me. Like I'm someone who's always liked a carefully scripted life. Like let me plan what I'm gonna say, let me memorize it, and then pretend like I'm just saying it off the cuff. You know, like that's sort of how I went through life. And so I joined this improv group, and one of them was like, oh, you should try stand-up. And so I wrote this stand-up thing about being in jail, and I performed it like at the equivalent of a school play, right? Like this is not a big thing. And my improv friends were there, and they were like, is that true? Did you get 32 felonies? And so it was like this decision moment, and I was like, yeah. And they're like, okay, cool. You want to go to lunch? Like they didn't care, you know, like it was such a big deal. Like no one was judging me. I mean, people were judging me, but I think I judged myself the most, you know, like I was like, I sort of projected all of my feelings about myself for a long time onto the world who weren't really thinking about me. But really the moment was, I gave like a local TEDx talk, and I got up and showed the Neighbor from Hell headline and said like, this is who I've been. And so let me tell you some other people I've been, you know? And that was a moment I was like, oh, this feels good. Like just to say it, and people like applauded, but it was also like the freedom I felt by just saying the thing I was so afraid that people would find out, like better than any drug, better than any pill I've ever taken. I was like, oh, this feels good. And then it was only then I was like, okay, I'm going to do this book, because it's a crazy story.
Wow.
To go from like identity theft to ghostwriter is kind of a crazy story, right? like people are paying me to steal their identity, right?
Laura, not that great. There are some similarities, gotta say.
Yeah. But you know, so but yeah, I decided to, you know, like write the book, and I've always wanted to write a book. I didn't think like my first book as me would be what this one's about, but it felt really good to do it. You know, like I didn't realize how much I needed to tell the stories I'd never told, you know, for years. And so, you know, I'd let all my kids read it before it came out. And it was like 3 weeks before it came out, I was like, you know, Simon Schuster was like a big deal, like book coming out. And I was like, what have I done? Like about 3 weeks before it was about to publish, I was like, like, you know, that feeling when you overshared, or you're like naked, unprepared for a math class or whatever that dream is, you know, like combine all the worst fear dreams. That was the feeling. I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Like, I can't undo this. It's coming out in 3 weeks. And, and
it's
you know,
already been shipped. It's like getting distributed across the nation.
It's in the bookstores.
Like, oh no.
Yeah. But
I can't take it back now.
I thought, you know, the thing is like, I thought people would like, in my mind, people are going to like, they're going to know my deepest, darkest, worst secrets, and they're going to run away, and they just run towards, because like now you're safe. Like I have thousands of people's secrets in all of my social media inboxes, and my phone number is pretty public too somehow. But everyone feels safe to tell their thing that they're really ashamed of. And that, and that feels good, you know?
In that time period before you had kind of overcome the hurdle of being very public, talking about it, and where you're kind of finding your feet and working, how did that, you know, feeling like you needed to keep it a secret affect your ongoing recovery, because I know that kind of just the idea of keeping secrets in general can be like challenging.
Yeah.
To kind of maintain that recovery. So like, I guess,
Yeah.
what was that? What was that like? What was the recovery from the addiction part of it happening? How was that being affected at that whole
It
time?
wasn't. It's interesting because like it wasn't. It wasn't affected by that. Like I was so invested in like keeping the secret, improving my goodness, and like rebuilding life, and but and it's been I'm 16 years since I've done over 16 years since I've done drugs, but in many ways it was easy because I was like, there's no part of me that was like, oh, that wasn't so bad, like I could do that again. Like in some ways, my rock bottom was a gift because there's no part of me that was like, oh, I'll do some recreational heroin. Like there's no part of me that thinks that. But my warning sign right now that my recovery might be a little iffy is if I'm pretending in any area of my life. Like that's my red now, right? Like the story's out. It's been out for, 4 years, like since I like told my biggest fear that people would Google. It was the end of 2019. So to me, I'm pretending. So like I'm saying yes when I mean no, or I'm pretending I'm happy in this relationship when I'm actually not. Or this friendship or work or whatever. So any area of my life where I find I'm faking it, that's like my doo-doo warning sign.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I think something that's hard for me is to sometimes know what your internal, like to know how I feel about certain things. Like I can say yes, and then, like go along with it for many months, and then sort of something creeps in of like, wait, I'm not actually into this. Like, I find it's not always an immediate thing, which is something that I try to improve on, because I think having a strong sense of self and like knowing when you're being authentic is a really clear sign that you're having a life of integrity.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I do that all the time. I'll be like, oh, like someone asked me if I want to go to trivia night this Wednesday. And they asked me on Sunday when I was like out, and I was like, yeah. And now I'm like, I don't want to go to trivia night. That's like, that's not the thing. That's just me, introvert, extrovert mode, right? Which I can flip from. But I think, if I'm working at a job I hate, right? Or I'm in a relationship where I'm pretending I'm into it when I'm not, or whatever it is. To me, it's like sort of bigger than just, I don't want to leave the house today. So I'm gonna,
right. It's like
I said yes, I would do this.
A deeper feeling.
Yeah, like we all know. Like I think we know when we're pretending, or I don't know. But yeah, it's a lot easier way to live than keeping secrets. That's exhausting.
Yeah, it's true. It's I haven't started posting on social media again, and I intend to make it a lot more, a lot less posting like things about me personally, and a lot more just about the type of work that I'm doing. Because I'm not honestly sure how you can sort of post on social media in an authentic way, because I think everything you do when you're like just kind of making an Instagram post or any sort of story, you're always kind of passing it through some filter of performance, and it seems very hard to be like completely truly authentic in any sort of post. So
unless you posted, I'm scared to post inauthentically, or I don't know how to post authentically on social media. Like if you just share the real thing, like you just said was real, you could just share that. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
maybe.
not like, my son says I'm cringe on social media, so I don't know. I'm like, I know, but that's my brand. No.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think
Yeah.
my plan right now is to just sort of share clips of the shows that I'm doing, and
Yeah.
not really talk about like, this is my life.
Yeah.
It's funny. I can relate to that idea of wanting to like perform goodness. I for the longest time I thought like, oh, if I just like, create the most perfect, piece of content, or like the most like excellent piece of art, then I'll be, worthy or something.
Yeah.
I don't think life works like that.
No, I don't think worth works like that. I mean, it's all, if it's external, I mean, it's hard not to be. I'm like, yeah, my authentic self, but could you also filter this Riverside thing for me so I look cuter? Like we're all just human. You know what I mean? I'd like to be younger and, we're just human. I mean, I just like, I don't know. I have a lot of compassion for humans being superhuman. Everybody's like messed up in their way. And
I mean, this idea of you like kind of being a vehicle for other people's secrets, I'm really interested by. I mean, how do you carry that responsibility? How do you think about that? An inbox full of people's kind of projecting their secrets onto you.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I'm nobody's therapist. I should not be anyone's therapist. But it's interesting because I think, like, everybody's carrying something. So it's it feels really hard to just like heart something when someone's just poured out their soul. So I try to respond to everything, but it gets hard. It gets hard to do that. And, but it's also easier to go through hard things with other people. So I just try to like I would do with anyone, just listen. And it's hard to do that in an inbox, but at least like just give a few words. But it's a lot.
Did you find that to be a similar sort of like mental thought process as being a collaborative writer?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I think like collaborative writing is like, it's like empathy on steroids, right? Like you have to put yourself in other shoes that you can be them. I mean, that's why I love memoir. Like I'm a literary agent, so like, I love talking about other people's books more than my own. But like memoir, the reason I love it is that you're like, it's the closest consciousness you're going to get to someone else, right? A first person memoir. Like if you read my book and you're in my head, you're making my choices for good or bad with me. And so it's just a way to hack empathy. Not that was the purpose, but like any memoir, like you're that person making their choices, which is like what collaborative writing is. So I think, empathy is a superpower, and writing, the kind of writing I did really helped me do that, because.
Yeah. It's like by putting yourself in someone else's shoes, you can really have just a superpower of empathy towards them. And now you can take that to all of the people who are reaching out.
Yeah.
What would you like to, I guess turning on that note, like turning things towards people who are maybe going through a tough time, or someone who's listening that feels defined by their past or trapped by their own past mistakes, like kind of how would you empathize with them, and what would you tell them to, what sort of small tangible step might they take to kind of start to build their own second act?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes I remember like sometimes, because it's not like I went through a hard thing once 16 years ago. Like life's hard for everybody. Everybody's going through stuff. My 2024 came in like ridiculously hard when I wasn't expecting it, and good. It was like death, divorce, and Oprah in like the first 3 weeks of 2024, and I was like, what is happening? But for the first time in my life, I went through hard things not alone. I didn't internalize it. Now I have like people, I have a feeling. I'll call 27 people. I'm like, what is this feeling I'm having? Let me tell you about it, which is so not how I've lived my life. But sometimes all you can do, you can't even like look forward to getting on the other side of something because you're not really sure how you're going to get to the other side. But like sometimes I just look forward to someday looking back. Like that's a little mantra. Like I can look forward to looking back on this. It's not like a platitude, like you'll get through it or the only way out is through, because getting through shit sucks. Sorry. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on your podcast. Sorry.
It's fine.
but sometimes that's all you can do. And know that like there's a million other people going through the exact same thing, at least, as you are. And sometimes, it's like the salt in the cup or the salt in the ocean. Like you're like, okay, there's a lot of people heartbroken right now, and it lessens it. Like other people lessen everything. So I think, it's just when we isolate and get in our own heads, certainly for me, and think I'm the only one and everybody else has it figured out. Like nobody knows what they're doing. That's That's my mantra.
Right.
Like, nobody actually knows what they're doing. Nobody knows anything. And we're all just
Nobody
like,
knows anything.
we're all ridiculous
Everyone's
humans.
just trying to figure
Yeah,
things out.
nobody
best
really
they
knows
can.
anything. We're all ridiculous humans being ridiculously human. And then if I'm feeling really bad, I watch reality TV. That always makes me feel better.
Yeah, that's true. New season dropping.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I think to distill what you're saying, it's to to reach out to your community and to find your community and to kind of share what you're going through, because other people can surely relate to it in their own way.
Yeah.
And like making that call to someone else or sending a text, can help their day out too. You're not putting them out in any sort of way.
Yeah. And just remembering to like give yourself the same compassion you would give someone else. That's so hard. Like I would be like, oh, I was judging myself. Like, how could I do this? How could I do this? But someone else tells me that, I'd be like, I understand. It was so hard to give myself the same compassion and forgiveness I would give like a stranger, or someone else. So I think that's just a good reminder.
Yeah, that is a good reminder. When you hear someone's story on the street, you would feel totally differently than if it's your own negative self-talk, or to say nothing of somebody writing an internet comment, which is I found is nowhere near the same as kind of people the way they interact in real life or over phone calls. Right. Yeah. Well, the final question that we ask all our guests is what's something that you'd say to your younger self?
Ask for help when you need it. Don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. It's not that profound, but it was profound. It's not a message I got, So I think I would tell my younger self it's okay to be struggling and ask for help.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and spending some time with me. I mean, it definitely, it really impacted me a lot. And, I hope everyone listening can go check out your book, The Many Lives of Mama Love, and to kind of sit with it and to help draw inspiration in their own life. It's really, really lovely to connect with you. And it's two ridiculous humans going through life. This is a nice conversation. Ridiculous humans
being ridiculously human together. Cool.
Yeah, totally. All right, Lara, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Lara Love Hardin for sitting down with me. I hope you got a lot out of this conversation. Hope it made you more inspired, more curious, empathetic. This show means a lot to me, and I'm very grateful that you're here, part of this community. So next week, you can look forward to a conversation with Shannon Beador. She is a reality TV star who went through a very public DUI citation, and she sought treatment for it, and it was very, very public and really quite scary. It was a bad accident. It was a messy situation, and she had to confront a lot. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation. I hope to see you there. So see you next week, and thanks for watching.